when the Kremlin decides that it's over for them, it's over.
Thing that was different about the first video that we saw yesterday, filmed against a background of alleged dead Wagner soldiers, was just the intensity of the vitriol and the very personal nature of the attacks on Shoigu, on Gerasimov, accusing them of corruption, accusing their families of living the high life while these poor volunteers, quote unquote volunteers, are dying at the front line. And the Russian Ministry of Defense is thinking about, where's the Ukrainian counteroffensive coming? Where is it coming? They're presumably holding artillery, in reserve to counter that counteroffensive, and Prigozhin wants it all coming to him for Bakhmut. But the general staff has to think about a bigger game than just Bakhmut. And Prigozhin is waking up to the fact that his troops have been basically cannon fodder for the Russian military, pursuing limited gains at very high cost. It feels like World War I, nothing's really moving, lots of shells being expended, lots of people dying, unclear what the overall strategic objective is on the Russian side. I mean, we have some idea, obviously, of what they're hoping to accomplish, but they don't have the resources in terms of material and personnel to really make the advances that Putin would like to see them make, and that leads to acrimony among the different players. Has also expended a lot on the Battle of Bakhmut, and there's a debate among the analysts, and it appears there's a debate among the Ukrainians about whether it's all been worth it. And I think those people who argued that they should hold there felt that they were costing more than it was costing them, and they needed to buy time to prepare for the counteroffensive with the arrival of more Western military equipment, those sorts of things. So it's an open question that I don't think we can answer until we see what happens with the anticipated Ukrainian counteroffensive.
However, I think it is really important to note that just because Prigozhin is threatening to withdraw on May 10th doesn't mean that he actually intends to withdraw on May 10th. This is much more likely to be a bargaining tactic, basically an ultimatum to the Russian MOD, to say, if you do not provide us with what we need right now, we're going to leave. The entire way that he's postured himself around Bakhmut is that he and his group of Wagner fighters, they are the victims of this super kind of opaque Russian bureaucratic apparatus that is the Russian Ministry of Defense. He's always presented himself as the victim in this scenario. He's represented his men as the victim in this scenario. And you really see that today in the video that he posted over the bodies of essentially mangled Wagner fighters. That's kind of the epitome of that mentality that he's not to blame. His men are fighting the good fight, and the Russian MOD is inhibiting their ability to do so. The capture of Bakhmut isn't going to open up any passive advance for the Russian military imminently, and all it's really done is burn through however many thousands of Wagner fighters it's burned through, as well as the equipment and ammunition needed for Wagner forces to have made the very, very small gains within Bakhmut they have made.
If the Russians are anticipating a Ukrainian counteroffensive soon, and I think they are, just today they announced that they're evacuating a few villages in occupied Zaporizhia from the front line. So I think they are going to start making decisions to conserve ammunition, which will also play into this shell hunger that Wagner is experiencing in Bakhmut. Recently, in the last few weeks, the Russians, and this is a combination of Russian airborne troops and Wagner, they've been actually able to press forward and start closing the heights around Bakhmut. The Ukrainians are still defending basically a single road out of Bakhmut at this point. They call it the Road of Life. But the Russians are making slow incremental gains. They've been at it for months, since the fall. Ukrainians are defending this area. This is important to Kyiv to hold on, and it's really a grind. I mean, this is urban warfare, street by street, intersection by intersection kind of fighting. He is running some risks here by saying that he and Wagner are going to leave Bakhmut by 10 May. He is not in a type of job where you can just quit and walk away from that. By essentially threatening the progress that they've made in Bakhmut by pulling out at this juncture, he's really exposing himself. I think eventually Putin has to get involved here and mediate between these two because this is spiraling and escalating. The thing to keep in mind about Wagner and about Prigozhin's place in it, it is illegal to be a mercenary in Russia and to run a mercenary company inside Russia. And Wagner has a new shiny office in St. Petersburg. Presumably, he has some of his assets in Russia now. Whenever the Kremlin decides that it's enough or it's too costly, they can make this go away in the form of raids and everything else. We saw this 10 years ago with the now defunct Slavonic Corps. They were an early mercenary group, and they did some things in Syria. And one day they flew home to Domodedovo and they were raided on the tarmac. So, when the Kremlin decides that it's over for them, it's over.